foggy and damp at 6 o'clock in the morning on December 16th, when this man received a telephone call from Adolf Hitler. Exactly 1 hour later, he became a key figure in one of history's most terrifying moments. 3 German armies of 250,000 men assembled by Hitler were unleashed against an American front of 75,000 men, stretched thinly over 85 miles of Belgian soil. A savage onslaught that could have turned the tides of war and history. This man is General Meinrad von Lauschert. He was the commander of the 2nd German Panzer Division in that Battle of the Bulge. Now he is here because a Warner Brothers motion picture is being filmed, Battle of the Bulge, a full-scale adventure in Cinerama, starring Henry Fonda and Robert Ryan, a spectacular account of one of World War II's greatest moments. Through personal experience, many will recall vividly how their enemy looked. Von Lauschert is to make certain that the enemy is authentic. Every German uniform and German medal once again passes through his inspection. Robert Shaw, the English actor, plays a role that could have been von Lauschert himself in 1944, when he moved his panzer forces toward the infamous town of Malmedy, with Hitler's words ringing in his ears. The battle must be fought with brutality, and all resistance shall be broken in a wave of terror. Once again, von Lauschert is at that same crossroads, but now with one of the stars of the film, Henry Fonda.
I have the role of the American officer in intelligence who suspects the Germans are readying a surprise attack. A co-star, Dana Andrews, and I are having a roadside conference before our next call to the front. Reminiscent of the actual battle, James MacArthur and George Montgomery are misdirected by Ty Hardin, a German paratrooper disguised as an American MP.
Further down the road is the town of Omblev, constructed to Cinerama proportions at a cost of over $500,000 by the Warner Brothers technicians. Henry Fonda tells of its part in the war and the film.
In 1944, there was but one occupant left in the Belgian village during that incredible destruction. A young girl, played here by Pierre Angeli. What thoughts must have run through her head as she readies herself for a rehearsal of her pathetic role, for Miss Angeli was a youngster in Europe during the war.
Logistics play a big part in war or motion pictures. With thousands of men cast as German soldiers, it was necessary to have technical advice on the details of their operations. General von Lauschert provided it. Opposing him on the Allied side, 3 American advisors covered the battlefield area, checking equipment and men. Warner Brothers moved in tons and tons of weapons and ammunition. Hundreds of vehicles and tanks were brought to battle readiness. Thousands of little things kept cropping up. The waging of war, even on film, brings staggering supply problems. The first week of December 1944, the Germans were still building up for the attack in the Ardennes. There had been intelligence reports indicating a shift of some divisions, giving the Germans a total of 28. The Americans stretched only 4 divisions along the same area. A calculated risk was taken that they could mount an attack before the Germans discovered this weakness. They didn't get away with it. Hitler had started his mad march to the sea. lunch, and the war waits. The sun is out, and the war waits. A visitor to the set, Robert Shaw's wife, actress Mary Ewer. And the war must wait. In life and in war, everyone waits. The Klieg lights go on one by one, and the war comes to life again. The camera crews set themselves. Director Ken Anakin quickens the tempo. Tiger tanks prepare for action. 21 years ago, another arm was raised just like this. The assault and destruction of Omblev is underway once again, with the dreaded Tiger tanks and their murderous 90mm guns leading the German infantry. Then, as now, the tank commander surveys the terrain and battle alignment. Operation Christ Rose moves on with its deadly purpose, relentlessly, while the cameras and sound men follow in its path of destruction. The battle raged on in harrowing intensity for days without end. The German tide was finally turned. Henry Fonda recalls how that defeat came about.
If victories are measured in lives saved, the Battle of the Bulge was a great one. The battle was won not by chance, by force of numbers, or by air superiority. It was won by the GI. The things that made him a fair garrison soldier, independence, cockiness, love of luxury, made him finally a deadly fighter. That struggle did not end until well into the new year of 1945. For some, it has never ended and never will. The Battle of the Bulge was von Lauschert's last. After escaping more than 400 miles from the Ardennes forest, he was finally imprisoned. After trial and acquittal of war crimes at Nuremberg, he was released. Now he lives on a small farm. He has no place in the world of today. His job here is finished. He will not be called on again.
The date was December 1944. The place, Europe. Allied troops had fought from the beaches of Normandy to the German border. Now they were sure the war was all but over. They were wrong. On December the 16th, Adolf Hitler made his last desperate bid for victory. All German reserves in men and armor were thrown into the Ardennes sector, the weakest point in the Allied line. The Battle of the Bulge was on. What happened during those desperate days is now history. and history's recreated in Warner Brothers Cinerama production, Battle of the Bulge. The producer, American Milton Sperling, was well qualified for his job.
Now, Mr. Sperling, you were with a combat photographic unit during the war, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was a Marine officer, and I had 10 combat cameramen. We covered 3 battles during the war: the Battle of Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Tarawa. And I made 3 documentaries out of those films, and perhaps the most difficult filming I've ever had to do.
Did your experiences as a combat photographer during the war help you with the Battle of the Bulge?
Well, as a matter of fact, it did, only in the sense that making Battle of the Bulge recalled my own experiences in the war and made it quite possible for the sound effects you heard today to be as realistic as those that I heard when I was listening to them whining overhead.
Now, Mr. Sperling, I've always wanted to know, how does a producer go about setting up a film of such a vast scale as Battle of the Bulge? It seems rather like a military maneuver in itself.
It is. The logistical problem is almost that of setting up a campaign, and putting a film together under any circumstances is very difficult. This one was extraordinarily difficult because we were working under very bad weather conditions. We had to do the picture very rapidly, as we have a release date of December the 16th, and we began photographing the picture late in February. So this whole film was put together, photographed, edited, scored, and prepared for release in a matter of about 8 months.
Now, where did you manage to find all the authentic equipment that you use in the film?
Well, we had to scour Europe for this. There are places where such tanks do exist, you know. Sometimes in junkyards, sometimes in existing armies, and sometimes just by chance one finds a cache of tanks, guns, old planes, and various other relics of World War II. We managed to assemble these great numbers of tanks you saw in the film after looking about for months and months. We found both the German tanks, still relics of World War II, and American tanks, which are sometimes still used by our own forces. So what you see on the screen are truly the tanks that were fought in the Battle of the Bulge and throughout the Western Front and on the Russian Front in World War II.
Well, no wonder the battle scenes look so authentic.
They were authentic.
Mr. Sperling, what amazed me as an American producer and writer, in the first half of the film anyway, you've portrayed the American forces in a rather unflattering light. Won't this make you rather unpopular at home?
I don't think it's unflattering because, as has been the custom with our Western powers, and particularly in the last war, we always lose all the battles and win the wars, you know. And in this case, we did too. We did take a bad beating and mauling during the first days of the Ardennes campaign, but we came back very strongly at the end of it with the massive assistance of General Montgomery's armies in the north. Our film deals with only those first few days of surprise attack. Then the Americans rallied, of course, and held, as they did at Bastogne and they did at the Meuse. And following that, the British came in with their strength from the north and crushed the Germans completely.
What made you choose Robert Shaw to play the German Colonel Hessler?
A young man like Shaw and a handsome man like Shaw can play virtually anything that's given to him. So it was rather an obvious choice. There are so few good actors. Finding a good one makes them capable of doing anything.
Well, Mr. Sperling, it's a wonderful performance in a magnificent film. Very many congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Shaw, the Battle of the Bulge is probably one of the biggest war films ever made. Is working in an epic film of this scale difficult for an actor?
Yes, it's very difficult because you can shoot a little bit on location. Maybe you're going to enter an armored car or a tank or something, and you've got this thing that'll take 3 days to shoot with 500 tanks, and you come down over a mountainside. And then 3 months later, you've got to shoot the scene inside, and you've got to match it. You've got to come inside the tank just as you left the terrain, or whatever you call it, 3 months ago. And also in an epic, you get a feeling the director's job's a bit different. He doesn't quite have so much time as you feel in a small, intimate picture. You can't talk about things because he's so dealing with armies, you know. A lot of energy goes on what they call the production values.
Now, The Battle of the Bulge is a very tough film to look at. Was it tough to make?
Yes, it was arduous. We were in the mountains, freezing cold, that wind is absolutely biting. There's a Spanish proverb about it, something about, I don't know what it is, but anyway, it was very, very miserable. And then we went to heat. Now, to be in the tanks was perhaps the worst thing, because in the winter, we were freezing in the tanks. And in the summer, I mean, you know, they got so hot that you'd have to come out every now and again. And when we got the smoke as well, that was almost unbearable.
Colonel Hessler is a pretty unpleasant character. Did you have any difficulty finding sympathy for him as a man?
Well, I'm not so sure he is so unpleasant, and I'm not so sure. I mean, I speak as one, as a novelist as well, whose books the Germans refuse to publish. So I find it very funny that I should play this German, who I find really rather admirable in many ways. I'm not so sure that in England, particularly, he won't emerge as the hero. You know, I mean, the Americans seem genteel in comparison. I'm not so sure he isn't the hero of the picture.
Colonel Hessler is a man who lived for action, and William the Conqueror is a man of action. I know you're going to make a film about him very shortly. How would you describe yourself? As a man of action, a dreamer, a thinker, a romantic?
Oh, both, I think. I'm very romantic. But I'm also quite practical, and I'm full of physical energy. A dreamer, yes, I am a bit of a dreamer, but I mean, I'm a kind of blend of these things.
You're the only English-speaking actor to play a German in the film. The other Germans are real Germans. Did you find any resentment?
That's an interesting thing. I think that perhaps they would themselves have liked another German to be playing the part. And I think that they would give a sort of wry smile at the commercial necessity of having an Englishman in this case. But what happened was very funny, is that at first I was too German and they were too English. And I had to revoice a lot of my scenes, because the German accent that I was using, which I'd studied for months arduously, was a Prussian one. And it was much more German than any of the Germans. And so then I cut down, and that seems to work. I don't know. What do you think?
I'd certainly agree with you. It's a magnificent performance.
Oh, well, I didn't mean that.
Well, I do. In a wonderful film. Congratulations, Mr. Shaw, and thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Cinerama hurls you into the most extraordinary days of World War II, into the biggest battle of the mightiest war men have ever fought, Battle of the Bulge. An assault so massive, only Teutonic arrogance could have conceived, right down to a clock to tick off the 50 hours of Nazi hell.
Unusual clock, isn't it? It has only one cycle, 50 hours. We have resources for only 50 hours of full-scale attack. That attack must take us to the River Meuse, and you shall do it in 50 hours.
Let me have your rifle.
What you need is a cannon, sir.
Last time I saw that German, all I had was a camera.
Kyler, you're crazy. Facts mean nothing to you. Evidence means nothing to you. All you can see are your own cockeyed hunches. Well, it doesn't work that way in the Army. I'm recommending you for transfer to a desk in Washington. You can tell the president how to run the war.
So first phase of our offensive was a success. The element of surprise was complete. The American communications are in a turmoil, but we must cross the Ur River before the enemy realizes that we have launched an all-out offensive.
This is the iron onslaught that burst through the greatest wall of arms ever mustered. This is the story of what men find in the heart of the Holocaust.
You are not only a fool, you are a traitor. And you are a murderer. You would murder my sons. You would murder my country. You would murder the whole world to stay in that uniform.
We're staying. Countermand that order to fall back. From this moment, all units are to make a stand wherever they are and fight. That means everybody, except tanks, clerks, cooks, bakers, staff officers. Anybody who can carry a rifle is to use it.
Look, Lieutenant, it's tough enough just keeping alive in this mess without you belly aching. Now, if you want to go ahead and surrender, you go ahead. I'll make it a lot easier alone.
Adolf Hitler is a crazy Austrian house painter. He's a madman. Thinks he knows more than the whole general staff. And he's leading Germany to total destruction.
Perhaps you are going too far, Lieutenant.
Starring Henry Fonda, Robert Shaw, Robert Ryan, Dana Andrews, George Montgomery, Ty Hardin, Pierre Angeli, Barbara Worley, Charles Bronson, Hans Christian Bleck, Werner Peters, James MacArthur, Telly Savalas.
Aren't you going to kiss me?
Louisa. Don't forget to feed the chickens, huh?
General Kohler did tell me one thing. What he admires most about you is your reputation with the ladies.
From the American commander of Bastogne to the German commander. Nuts. Nuts.
You listen to me, Colonel. There are survivors in all massacres. I warn you, if any of my men are harmed, you will be held responsible. There'll be no place on this earth you can hide. And when you are found, I hope I'm the man that ties the rope around your neck.
Battle of the Bulge comes to the giant medium that has been waiting for a spectacle comparable to its dimensions. Battle of the Bulge.